matchmakers with kind of not the greatest types of people, just like I was. We'll go into that later.
So there's some reality.
There is a reality there. But anyway, and then she ends up falling in love with her boss, who is Jewish but secular, and yes, that's what it's kind of about.
Wow. So you kind of went into this a little bit, but what inspired this story for you? What were the different, there's a little bit of reality mixed in.
True. So infertility is actually something that is very close to my heart because literally everyone in my family seemed to be infertile. My mom was secondary infertile, and then my sister, it took her like 5 years, and then she went through IVF. And then I won't mention the other people in my family because they're like super private. But so anyway, I just assumed that I was going to be infertile as well. So I remember after the first month I was married and I got, my period, so I knew I wasn't pregnant. I passed a playground with kids and I just started sobbing because I'm like, I'll never have kids. But then the second month I became pregnant. And then my sister over there, her name is Ellie as well, she's like, no, you're not. Because nobody in my family had gotten pregnant like that quickly. And I'm like, no, I have tests. And then she's like, no. It was really funny. It's one of my favorite memories. Anyway, so yeah.
So there was some reality in there. And you also mentioned a bit about the matchmakers. And one thing that I loved about your book was that we get to see these absolute horrific dates, hilariously horrific dates. And she's set up by this hilariously blunt, cruel matchmaker who really tells it like how she sees it. And it's reminding me so much of the way that we kind of see so much of those dating horror stories with swiping on apps. And it there were so many connections that I saw. Was that something that you did intentionally? Were connecting it to Orthodox dating to modern dating, or did it just sort of fall out of the story naturally?
Yeah, I think it just came out of the story naturally. It was just really funny because I have some friends who are single and they tell me about their horror stories, and then, oh my gosh, Quora, the website. I know Levi Gadol loves that website. I get it in my inbox. So I just read a lot also, and then I experience some horror stories myself. There was one guy who flew out to date me, and then he decided to propose the second date. And then I knew, no, this is not gonna work. One of the things he said to me is, I can see you being the mom of 10 kids. And I'm like, nope.
Forget.
So anyway, so then he proposed, and we were in a coffee shop, and I knew him maybe for 4 hours, and I'm just sorry, no, this is not gonna work. And he started crying. And then I thought to myself, oh my God, I'm gonna have to actually marry this person because I'm a people pleaser, kind of like Panina was, and it's really hard for me to hurt someone's feelings. And then he's 2 hours, 3 hours later, I felt like I was a hostage in his car. And then he goes, fine, but then you have to give me $200 for flying out here. Remember, Mother?
Yes.
Yes. So then I ran into my parents' house, and I'm like, I need $200. Fast. And then she's like, and my mom, what did you say? You're like, no. Or you're like, why? And I'm like, I'll tell you later. Just give me the money. So, yeah.
So you basically paid this man to stay out of your life.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, and you kind of mentioned the people pleaser quality, and Panina is like that. And that gets her into situations that are pretty heavy, but something that I loved about your story is this balance between the heaviness of her feeling this connection and responsibility to her family, and the way that she is clearly using humor as a coping mechanism through it all. And your voice is so funny. And is that something that you gravitate towards in romantic comedy, that sort of balance between light and dark? And what inspires that?
Yeah, I love that question because I think I'm a really dark humor type of person. You could tell, I love, and you were telling me earlier how you just gravitate towards opening scenes that start at a funeral. Mm-hmm. And I just love that.
Constantly trying to start a book at a funeral.
I just love that. and at the same time, you just want your books to represent real life. And in real life, there are challenges and there are hardships. And then when you're an author and you have to do story structure, you know that your main character has to have a flaw. So you have to take all of that into consideration. But I know personally, I like to use humor as a coping mechanism. So I just gravitate towards that. And I think everybody's main character sort of takes after a lot of their, characteristics.
Yeah, I just love that. Penina is such a funny, clever character, and she has so much, her familial relationships are so important to her. And I could see that she even mentions Jane Austen in the book, and there was clearly throughout the family, it felt so much like the Bennets to me. Is Jane Austen a big inspiration for you as a writer?
Thank you for asking. Jane Austen is like God to me. All of her books are like the Bible. I think she was the originator of rom-coms. So I think she was so clever and so brave, and she was just awesome, all around awesome. And we were speaking earlier in the green room. They have a green room. There's green carpet up there. Do you think all green rooms have green something?
They should if they don't.
I don't know. What was I saying, Ellie?
We're talking about Jane Austen.
Right, Jane Austen, yes. So she was amazing. And the Bronte sisters, oh yeah, we were talking about that. The Bronte sisters were actually really condescending towards her. They're like, oh, rom-coms are just fluff or whatever. But actually, they're not fluff. They're very intelligent.
So we've been dealing with this criticism for years against rom-coms.
Yes.
Even dates back to the Bronte sisters.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we are both romance authors, so we have to talk about the romance itself in the book with Sam, who is her boss, very swoony, very grumpy, all the things that romance readers love. But one thing that was so important to Penina is that her faith is such a big part of her life and her identity, and she's uncompromising in that in a really lovely and strong way. And I was just wondering, as I was reading it, how do you tend to approach intimacy, both physical and emotional, in romances? Because with romances, a lot of them are spicy, and
Yes.
this one is very swoony, but they are
Yes.
touching for most of it. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, so first of all, I blame my agents because I wanted to have a good spicy scene or two, and they're like, no, you have to keep according to the halachos basically, which is the Jewish law, and one of them isn't even Jewish, and I'm like, WTF? Anyway, so then for my second book, guess what? I just did it, and then they liked it. So sorry. What was your question now?
Oh, it's just about approaching emotional and physical.
Right. And so I really did want to do, I just really love a good spicy scene. Now, Jane Austen had no spice in it, so I used to think, okay, once there is physical intimacy, something about the book is just over, or it's not as good anymore. The best part is the build up towards that. But then I started reading Susan Elizabeth Phillips and Rachel Gibson, and I'm like, oh no, spicy scenes can actually make it even better.
Mm-hmm.
But my books don't have that, sorry. Well, this one doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, and what I do love about your book is it is a slow burn, but there is so much tension. And I feel that way too when I'm writing too, where there is the tension and there is the release of tension, and then we need to rebuild the tension. And so you are doing that with this relationship, but it is so much about the emotional intimacy and the way that they're revealing things to each other,
True.
rather than having those, spicy moments. But,
True. Yeah.
next book we'll get that too. We'll get some
Yes,
spicy
you
ones.
will.
Yeah. And then, yes, so with romance, we also love our tropes. And you have some really fun ones in there. There is marriage of convenience that you really subvert. Because oftentimes in marriage of convenience, they fall in love with the person that they're conveniently supposed to marry. And in this one, she does not.
Right.
It is a real thorn in Sam's side that she is getting involved in this
Yes.
marriage of convenience.
Yes.
And the grumpy sunshine is a big one, the sweet person and the grumpy man. What are some other tropes that you are a fan of that you might want to write in the future?
Yes, I love that question because I am currently, for my second book, I am writing her brother's best friend. I think that's a trope, right?
That's a classic.
Classic. Oh my gosh, haven't we all had a crush on our brother's friends? Because that's all we see. So I am writing that, and then of course, so for my second book, for example, I know that was like, we were going to talk about that, so I'm just, doing it now anyway. So that was basically, I have the enemies to lovers and the brother's best friend type of thing, and also he's a little bit older. He's 9 years older. I don't know if that's a trope.
Age gap, that's a trope.
Okay, so is it a creepy one?
No, 9's great.
Okay, great.
9's just not creepy. Slide right in.
There, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. I guess, do you think about, are you the type of writer where your process is you considering those tropes, or do they just kind of happen while you're writing them?
Yeah, I think they just kind of happen when I write them. I think because, when I read rom-coms and books similar in this genre, I sit down and it just I just see it in my head and it just plays out. But I do have to call out Julie Carpenter because she was a big help in plotting this book and in my entire career. Let's have a big hand for Julie. I also want to call out Sky Smith, who's also an awesome writer. He was he's the group leader, and he taught me everything I know.
Well, that segues back into a new question. So at your book launch, you called out me during the book launch.
Oh,
and now you just called out other authors.
Right.
So clearly working with other writers is a big part of your process. So how early do you tend to show your writing to other people, and how much do you use their feedback throughout the drafting process or editing? Where do they come into play?
So usually there will be a point where I want to not really commit suicide, but sort of I'll have like a breakdown crisis, usually about a quarter of the way through the book or halfway through the book, and then Julie will talk me off the ledge.
All is lost moment.
Yes, exactly. And I'm like, this sucks, I can't do it type of thing. So for my second book, it was kind of a different process because I realized, okay, what the agents and the editors say, that's what I'm gonna probably have to do. I mean, you don't have to listen to them, but I'm very much a people pleaser, submissive. I bow down to you. So so I just kind of gave it to them, and then they said, okay, this is great, this is wonderful, and then just redo the second half completely.
I relate to that, where once you get involved with a publisher, it's this wonderful dream, but you also end up kind of what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do next? I'll write whatever you want, please.
Yeah.
So it's good to kind of have the other writers there that help bounce ideas off of.
Yes.
So now, what are you working on next? We got a little bit of a sneak preview with this spiciness. The next one's gonna be spicy. What can you tell us about that next book?
Yes. So speaking about dark humor, I just love this because, so this is Zevi's, so this is the gay character's younger sister, and her name is Ashira, and the book starts off where she's sitting Shiva, which in Orthodox Jewish community means somebody very, it's either your husband, your sibling, or your parent dies, and you have to have 7 days where you're completely depressed. You can't wear makeup, you can't shower, and then everybody comes over to your home. So if you're an introvert, it's like hell. I'm planning on going on a plane or something if this happens to me. I'm not doing it.
Just be stuck in transit.
I'm just gonna be in Hawaii, and if people want to come visit me there, I don't know. But anyway, it sounds like you're supposed to focus basically on your mourning, I guess. So basically, that's where the opening starts, actually, where she's Ashira sitting Shiva, and guess what? Also, her ex-husband and her ex-best friend are together. They're married. So right away, at the beginning of the book, she's lost her almost entire support group. She lost her mom, she lost her best friend, she lost her husband. So she's in a really dark place, and I just love that.
Wow. So that's coming out in 2024.
Yes.
So my 2024 book also begins at a funeral. So
Love it.
I relate to this.
And the title.
The title is 4 Weekends in a Funeral. I let you know right away. We're gonna start this at a funeral. And yeah,
I love
so
it.
yeah, I also feel like there is, when we're in those like really dark places, sometimes humor is the thing that we need the most. And with romance, we know we're always gonna get that HEA, the happily ever after. So there's something that's so safe about that too, where we can explore grief, we can explore loss, but we
Yes.
know the reader, it's like, we're taking care of you, don't worry. Like, we're gonna get you to a happy spot, like you're gonna
Yes.
smile by the end. So I think
Right.
that can be such a wonderful place to explore those kind of dark places. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for that release.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then if you meet the character in the book, and she is just absolutely hilarious. So I'm so excited for her story.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then how is it now that you're writing? Now that you have fan voices, you have people that loved your book.
Yes.
It's been out in the world for a bit. You have great reviews. Do you hear them in your head at all? Are you hoping to kind of give them some things that they might enjoy? Do you see things they want and want to write to it, or do you have to shut that out?
Yeah, so during actually the ARC process, where the early readers can have those, the book and read it, there were, that really affected my writing, and I really wanted to please everyone. So, and then somebody basically wrote a review that said, I just used the one word fat, and because of that, she hated it. And something like that had never occurred to me. Like, I see her point, and so she kind of saved me, because I was able to still make changes at this point. So normally, I think for authors during the ARC process, you basically don't change too much, unless you're like an idiot people pleaser like myself. And then I'm just like, I gotta change all of this to make everybody happy. So that really ruined my life.
It's like Susan from Lacrosse doesn't like it. What will I do to help Susan love it?
Yes.
Like, oh my gosh. Yeah, no, so we kind of you started this a bit, but like, how was the process of writing book 2 versus book 1? Because book 1, you're writing to find an agent. If you're not familiar, you have to use that book as a way to find someone to represent you. And with book 2, you are writing it now more for yourself, or are you writing it for other people? What's your experience? How's it different?
Yeah, so when I was still querying, I believe, I had my agents, but they still needed to have like a second book in case the publisher wanted to see it. So I did have to have some sort of, what do you call those?
Like a pitch.
Like a pitch, exactly. And it was really funny, because the UK people that I went with, Embla, they loved it. And the hilarious part is that my actual book is like totally opposite. Like, it has nothing to do with the actual pitch. So I totally fooled them. Like, not on purpose, but like just when I start, whenever you, like for me, there's plotters and then there's pantsers. I wish I was a plotter. Like, I try, but it doesn't work. And then I end up like writing scenes and then deleting it. Like, I just have to write it all out. And then I have to be told it sucks before I can realize, okay, we have to redo it. Yeah.
So how far do you go down the pantser route before you have to, like,
It's miserable.
do you write the whole book and then hit start over, or do you go scene by scene?
I usually go scene by scene, but like I said, for like book 2, I'm gonna have to like redo the whole second half. And then my UK agent was like, okay, we need this done in like 2 weeks. And then my US agent, messaged me. She's like, honey, don't worry about it. And then the editor at Embla messaged me privately. She's like, honey, don't worry about it. So I'm just like, Hannah, you suck.
Yeah, no, I'm also a bit of a pantser, aspiring plotter. I hope to rise to the level of plotting one day. I'm always working towards it. But yeah, no, I think for my book 2, I pitched a book that was totally different than book 1, than what it is now.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, and there's like there was always a van. Like, the second book has a van in it.
Okay,
And that
was
was
by a funeral, like by a graveyard.
the first version started at a memorial. And I tried to say that was different than a funeral. I'm like, it's not the same as the first book. It's not a funeral. It's like, no, it's totally different. It's a memorial. It's like,
gosh.
No, it's the same. So yeah, I had to change that. But yeah, no, it's a similar thing where I had to like kind of explore what it could be, decide I don't like that book, and then explore a new book until we find what we're excited about. So it's interesting that you kind of have a really similar process.
Yeah, it is very interesting. And then like, just grabbing the microphone. It's really funny because Hannah, the UK one, she's like, it's fine. I'm like, no, I have to change everything. So I don't know what her problem is. Maybe she has to make rent. I don't know.
Or she just loved it the way it was.
Yeah, or that.
We all had different tastes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So so that's the conclusion of what I had planned. So now we're gonna go off book.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So so with book 2, are you now at the process where you're editing it? Are you still writing it? When can we expect it?
Yes, so I am still doing the developmental edits. I feel like there's like, for me at least, there were like 3 stages of the editing process. And by the time you're done, you literally want to vomit because you are so sick of reading your book. I remember Julie telling me when she did her book, she like read it 50 times, like from beginning to finish, and she also wanted to vomit. But you didn't. You didn't. My husband has a vomit phobia. Call out to Daniel. And Ari.
Ari wants a call.
Okay, hi Ari. What was your, wait, what were we talking about?
When can we expect it?
Okay, so basically, I think it's set for June of 2024. And I am working hard on it, so don't you worry. It'll be fine. And Ashira will get her HEA
Good.
with Ellie. But I think people, so your name is it's so weird because in the Orthodox Jewish community we say Ellie, but spelled E-L-I. But I think people in the secular community will say Eli. So people might think it's like a lesbian romance, which is fine. I've read those. It's good, but this one isn't. But yeah, you'll figure it out.
There are androgynous names all the time.
There you
We'll
go.
figure it out.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So with your book 3,
Oh my God.
are
yes.
you working on pitches for that too? Are you
It's really
have you started that process yet?
Well, it's really funny because people who have read my book, a lot of them messaged me and said, hey, I really want to see Frady have, her story. I want to see that. So in my head, I've kind of already started where she's like this. I relate the most to Frady, to be honest. She's kind of this rebellious, gothic, Orthodox Jewish, older teenager girl. I don't remember. Maybe she's like 19 or something. So I just pictured her at the beginning of her love story, like, who is she gonna fall in love with? Like, and I just decided it's gonna be like a rabbi. Because that's like the opposite of what she wants. So I'm like, okay, what would make her, not want to marry somebody? I'm like, okay, a rabbi. Like, she would probably sooner want to marry a priest than a rabbi, because that's just who Frady is. She's just kind of oppositional, defiant.
No, I loved the sister relationships in the book. They're such a big part of the book, and she clearly loves her sister so much. Frady is so fun. Did you have a lot of fun writing those relationships, and what drew you to writing such strong sisters?
I have a really strong sister of my own. Shout out to Ellie. I just, I think a lot about Orthodox Jewish communities is so family oriented because like there's all these holidays and even like Shabbos where every Saturday we kind of live like the Amish a little bit because we don't use technology. And there's always like a lot of gatherings and a lot of people have large families, but like I said, there was some infertility. No offense, mother. So she had secondary infertility. I think you were pregnant after you had a 4th pregnancy that was a miscarriage. I'm so sorry. It's like I ruined your uterus. Sorry. Anyhow, yeah, so I love my sister and we have a great, strong relationship. And yeah, I think, that's a big part of my writing is kind of like family oriented.
So with Libby too, the other sister, not Frady, She also is experiencing some financial problems with her family that Penina really takes on, that she really wants to help with. Were there aspects of this sort of like having to take things on for other people and exploring those themes that you found like particularly interesting with the family members?
Well, yeah, that's really interesting. People were actually messaging, or they were writing reviews, and they're like, "Oh, or Penina's such a goody, goody two shoes," and something like that. I think I tried to make her more not as nice. That was still during the editorial process. In real life, Penina is like this awesome woman, and she's so kind and giving. And in real life, I'm not like that at all. So I don't know where she came from, but I admire her a lot for that. Because in real life, I'm just like Ellie Sheva over there. I'm like, you're on your own. Ellie.
So you relate a bit more towards Sam, the love interest, the grumpy one who's
Yes.
like, they'll figure it out. Don't go help that person.
Exactly.
With that.
Right.
They'll let them fend for themselves.
Yeah.
He's holding the book, I'm trying to see what it is.
Yeah. So with the writing process, do you have any stories that you wanted to tell that maybe have that you lost in the trenches while you were trying to find an agent that you might want to revisit? Do you have any? Is there anything in the files of Heidi that we might find later?
So this is so humiliating. There is a book I self-published called And Along Came Layla. And I said to my husband, Daniel, please make this unavailable so people can't read it. Like, I literally didn't know what I was doing. So I had to nurse Ari for like a really long time because he couldn't swallow food and whatever. It's like a long story. So I was bored because he like wanted to breastfeed constantly. Sorry, Ari. And so I decided, okay, I'm just gonna write a book while, I nurse, whatever. And I didn't know what I was doing at all. And then I just decided to self-publish because that was during the time, I think, of 50 Shades of Grey. And she made a ton of money and she self-published. So I'm like, that's gonna be me.
Yeah.
I remember when the book came out and I was like walking my dog back then and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be so rich and famous any minute now. It did not happen. Spoiler alert.
Did you consider self-pubbing this book first, or how did your decision to decide to query this one, how did that happen?
So after my self-publishing experience, I kind of decided I'm probably not gonna go that route unless, I don't know, it was just different. I was just hoping that, I never thought I would get an agent, but at the same time I never thought I would self-publish again, so yeah.
So that first experience did not sell you on self-publishing.
No.
Well, we're glad it happened this way, because then we all got to read your book.
Thank
Through
you.
Elgo, yeah. So, so do you have anything else that you want to talk about with your book while we're here? Anything you want to share about it?
Yes, it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I had to have a double mastectomy because I had stage 0 cancer. I just wanted to say that.
Well, I'll segue that into my book then.
Exactly. We have that in common.
Yeah, so that was
Yeah.
that was one of the ways that we connected, was
Right.
that my book is about a woman she has BRCA, the breast cancer genetic mutation, and she has a mastectomy, a prophylactic mastectomy, and then is navigating the dating world.
Yeah.
And one thing that you also experienced was you had a mastectomy with stage 0 cancer. And you had that while you were writing your second book, right?
I know, it was awful. Yeah.
So, are there anything? Did that have any impact on your writing process and your experience having to hit those deadlines and having to be on deadline with that book?
Yeah, I think I was really depressed during that time. Like, it's just like really emotional. I don't know why. It's like not a big deal. It's just like body part, whatever. But I guess I took it really emotionally. And it's so hard to write comedic material when you're feeling depressed. But I just did it. I just had to, force. But it was hard. But it's cool. It's cool.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's body parts, but it also is something that is so connected with the, kind of the concept in our society of femininity, and romance can often be about that experience of intimacy, and losing body parts can really affect the way that you view yourself, your self-confidence, and the way that you view intimacy and love and romance. And so having to write a romance while you're going through that, I can't imagine how incredible it was that you were able to continue writing during that process. Like it's absolutely incredible.
Let's clap for me.
Yeah. So, do we have any? With the book too, I heard you talking about how there was a lot of darkness of it in the way that she begins that story. Do you feel like you were able to at least have an outlet for that when you were going through all this too?
Yeah, it was my husband Daniel. He got the worst of it, so shout out to Daniel. Oh, that was funny. Sorry. I guess that was an insider joke, but I don't know. But yeah, I guess did I have an outlet? I think I contacted you maybe once. Things caught me off guard a little bit, like when I was reading a book and there was like a spicy scene and something happened with the nipple, and then I just started to cry because I'm like, well, that won't be me. So then I contacted you and you're like, yup.
Yeah, no, I had like the same experience. Like when I was getting my mastectomy, I was reading basically only romantic comedies because I'm like, this is all I can handle. Like I don't want a mystery. I don't want there to be like a dead body somewhere. Like it needs to be, something where I know at the end they're gonna put me back together at the end. And so I would get caught off guard by that, where I would notice something where I'm like, oh, okay, we're talking about nipples. Like I never thought about it that much, but I guess they're all over the place. And it was a very strange experience. And like to the point where, in my book where I have the character who had a mastectomy, she talks about her phantom nipples, where it's like, where are they? Like, what are they up to? And like when things are happening that feel intimate, like what are my nipples out there doing? Because it's like,
so funny.
it's such a strange phenomenon where it's like you don't actually notice how much it's discussed, especially in romance, until you suddenly like don't have that body part, and you're like,
so true.
we're always talking about it. We're always noticing it, at least in romance novels. And
Yeah.
so it is something that is specific to that genre, where we kind of share that thing that you hit it whenever you read it, and you don't know what to do with that, other than I guess make fun of it.
Yeah. So did you know, did you always know growing up that this was something that you were gonna have to do?
Yeah, so my mom had breast cancer when I was 10. So, and she tested positive for the gene. It was like right at the beginning when they had BRCA testing. And so she tested positive, and then I had 2 other aunts that also had breast cancer who were also positive for the gene. So we were like, it's looking good for me. Like that's the direction we're headed. So I kind of always knew that was in the cards, and I didn't realize how much that affected the way that I approached romantic relationships until I had my mastectomy, and I'm like, oh yeah, I really I think my husband's here. Like when we first met, I was like, well, I need to have kids by this point because I'm gonna have I need to have my breasts removed, and it was this whole thing.
Was this the first date?
It was like real. No, first date, but it was too early. It was pretty immediate, and so it was one of those like anxiety things where I felt like, well, if I control all of it, then it won't feel so scary. I won't be overwhelmed by it, and so. It wasn't until I actually had the mastectomy that I was able to have that clarity of, oh, this is how it affected me, and this is the way that I approached romantic relationships differently because of it. And so I really wanted to write a romance with someone who had already had a mastectomy and was now finding her love story. So it wasn't this thing where, oh, it's this thing, I have to get it done before I have my mastectomy, or else I won't have all these life experiences. It's like, no, you can still have all these foundational romantic experiences after you've had a mastectomy. Yeah. And, hopefully it was a way of me processing those feelings, but hopefully maybe someone who is on that same path might take a second and think, maybe I don't have to have my entire life figured out by the time I'm 30, so that I can get my mastectomy and be perfect.
Right.
Like it's hopefully it'll give a little bit of perspective there. That was my goal with that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So how did it affect your writing differently, do you think?
I think, well, it gave me a story that I felt I was really excited to tell. Because before that, it was not the first book I tried to write, but it was the first book I finished. And I think it was because I had so many, like, little weird premises where I was like, there's been many books where the premise of my book is that a woman shows up to her ex's funeral only to discover that he never told anyone they broke up, and she now is roped into pretending to be his girlfriend still, and cleaning up his apartment with his very handsome best friend,
Adam.
who she doesn't get along with, but chaos will ensue. And is like I was really inspired by the movie While You Were Sleeping. So there's a lot of those hijinks, yeah. So I had other ideas for books that had that sort of initial premise of like, what if you went to your ex-boyfriend's funeral, and they were all like, I'm so glad that he found you, and it's just like, this is horrible, like a nightmare. And there was there was the thriller version of that book and a dramatic version of that book, and it wasn't until this experience that I felt like, no, that's the story I want to tell here. Is that woman, how would the feeling she has after her mastectomy be the perfect storm for this situation, and then what would happen next? And I think that's kind of how that affected my writing process. And now I'm tasked with writing other books that are not about that, because you can't write the same book over and over again.
Darn it.
Yeah. But it's been nice because I can kind of explore other things, other themes, without having to kind of mine my own life experience in the same way. And I feel like with first books in particular, there is so much of that where you are trying to find the thing that feels the most connected to you and who you are as a writer, because this is the first thing everyone's going to read.
Right.
And did you feel like you had that experience too, where your first book is so close to aspects of yourself that you're revealing?
No, I just wanted to get an agent, so I was just writing, like Julie and I went to this thing at a library many years ago. What city was that even in, Julie? Blooming. Okay, so not that far away. Anyway, it felt like it was like really far away at the time. And the agent was saying, write what you know, but also something very specific to you. So if you're like an attorney in real life, write some, story that involves like whatever kind of attorney you are type of thing. So Julie and I were driving home, and she was just saying, Orthodox Judaism is kind of this closed community that not a lot of people know about, but it's kind of interesting to people. Why don't you just do your romance? And she was even saying, like, and Along Came Layla, which is about a nanny that falls in love with the kid's dad. She's like, you could just do that basically in Orthodox Jewish. And I'm like, nobody's going to want to read that. And then she's like, yes, they will. And I'm like, no, they won't. And then she's like, so Julie's always right. I just want to say, as a life lesson, Julie's always right. Always listen to Julie. Yeah.
We all need a Julie in
We
our
all need
lives
a
that
Julie.
can tell us what to do. We all want one, yeah. I feel like I've heard that too, where it's like, write what you know. I could never, I work as I was a practicing attorney, now I work legal adjacent, and I don't know if I could write a book about lawyers. I feel like I'd be like, it's really boring.
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
I'm so curious. What is legal adjacent?
I work for Thomson Reuters, so for all of you who live around here, it is. So I am a editor for legal publications.
Oh, interesting.
So I kind of so when we had to do pass pages for our book,
Right.
when you have to have your last set of eyes on it
Right.
and make sure everything looks right. I do that all the time, but for legal books. So I read lots of statutes and and lots of Supreme Court cases. So it is. It is a very
It's sexy work.
so sexy. It's so like, why don't we have romance set in that situation? No, and it's fun because it's sort of a bit like when I was in law school, like law review, where you're just sort of reading about legal works, but like you don't have all the pesky pressure of having actual clients, and so I do enjoy that about it. But I wonder what it would be like to write about a lawyer and in that experience, because I'm just like, I feel like I'd be so in my head about like, well, this isn't accurate. Like, this isn't how that would work. Like, I can't write Suits. Because I'd be like everything about it where I'm like, they would never do that.
Or the Lincoln Lawyer.
Yeah, I would be like, no, that's not how that would go.
Who wrote that? Who was the author again for the Lincoln?
I don't know. Well, lots of lawyers do write legal thrillers.
That's it. And I'm like, I was thinking that. I'm like, wow, is this like so accurate? Like, yeah, I was thinking.
I mean, maybe some of them are. Maybe
No,
I just
yeah.
would feel like I would be like, you know, and then and then we had to file this document, and the fax machine was broken. But the judge wants a fax, so we got to do it this way. It's just like that kind of issue.
Yeah.
So, do you have things that you kind of you don't know if you could write about, but you have so much knowledge about things that you don't know if you could really get into?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't really know anything about anything, to be honest.
So everything is a new and fun experience.
Yes, I
There's
was a puppy.
Yes.
The bed when I have a puppy. Where's Isla? Shout out to Isla.
He was misbehaving. They took him
Oh,
home.
he's misbehaving. Yeah. But the vet was like, yeah, when you're a puppy, everything is like Vegas, like right like Vegas.
Well, yeah.
No, I don't know why I brought that up. Sorry.
Well, and with character exploration, and there's so much about if you are learning something new, it can sometimes be really fun to incorporate that into a character. So I feel like it would be fun to explore a lot of things maybe you don't know about. Like for example, Panina she works at a jewelry store, and I know from another time I've spoken to you that you do not work at a jewelry store.
Right.
But you just had, there are so many quotes throughout, like little at the top of each chapter that are about fashion and jewelry and kind of that experience like femininity, and it seems like that's something that was really interesting to you in research. Are there different things that you gravitated towards when you were researching this book?
Yeah, that's a good point. So the first editor, when I got the editor that I guess bought the book, her name is Tony, and she actually didn't do the editorial process. They hired an outside editor, and she was the one who said, hey, maybe she could be kind of like a fashionista type of thing. But yeah, I don't really know, like for the jewelry, for example, my mom got a new engagement ring because she convinced my dad, like, if you're married for this long, you deserve a huge diamond or something like that. So then I went to that jewelry store and I'm like, hi, I'm kind of an author and I just, can you tell me a little bit about how this jewelry stuff works? And it was really awkward. It was like a 1-minute conversation, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, he probably thinks I'm like a burglar, because I'm like, well, how do you secure it at night? And so then I'm like, sorry, okay, bye. So I just did a lot of internet, YouTube research, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I really want to write a thriller, but I'm a bit like,
You're my twin.
let's write a thriller. Yeah, how do I call someone up? I'm like, okay, so if I were to rob you, how would I do it? That was literally a conversation where I was like, who do we know that owns a store? So I could ask them, and be like, okay, I'm not gonna rob you, but I do need to know how to rob you.
Right.
I do need to know how that would work. So yeah, that's like the with romance we don't really run into that as much, which is nice, because I used to ask full questions about silly things about like, you work with trains, right? Tell me what that's like.
Right.
You do this and that. But yeah, no, with thrillers, I think that is an interesting part of research, is that you have to figure out how things are secured. But it's like you also had to deal with that.
Yes. In fact,
Towards the end of the book, Panina is driving and she calls the airport and she's like, I need to contact somebody. So I did, in fact, call the airport here, and I said to the woman, look, this is not real, but in theory, if I wanted to contact somebody, how would that work? And she thought I was really nuts, but yeah. It's so awkward to do research. Maybe if you're famous, then it's like not a big deal, but if you're not famous, it's just awkward.
But like, what is famous with like writing? Where it's like, I wonder how famous do you have to be where it's no longer awkward to be like, hey, so I'm writing this book about this topic.
Right.
Will you help me? Yeah, I think it's always that part of it is always really uncomfortable, but you have to just do it.
Yeah.
With writing a thriller, do you feel like the experience of writing romance and like those heightened emotions, do you kind of see yourself gravitating towards that inverted part of that with the thriller? Like what about, why are you excited to write a thriller?
I know, it is so weird. What is wrong with us? Because there's other authors like us, they love rom-coms and they love like thrillers. So there's something in our brain that is just different. I don't know what it is.
I think it's like the chasing the tension. Like we're just we're just sort of like we're like, okay, and then we're gonna get them in a room together. And it's like they're either gonna kiss or kill each other. Like what's gonna happen?
Right.
It's like that you're always looking to figure out how can I raise these stakes? How can I make it more emotional? And like I'm not a big horror person, but like my husband's a big horror person. And I'm like, what is it about it? And it's like you physically feel that tension when you're watching a horror movie.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about watching like a really romantic movie, where I'm like, I can feel it. I can feel them like wanting each other and be like, oh gosh, and now she has to move away, and will they write to each other? And then, but it's the same thing with horror, where you feel those feelings inside you. And I feel like that's kind of what we're looking for with a thriller too, where it's like, let's see if we can really can we torture these people even more?
Yeah, like Gillian Flynn. Who are your favorite? And I like Brian Freeman. I like the psychological, psycho thrillers.
I mean, I also like Gillian Flynn, and I just remember like reading the twist in Gone Girl.
Oh
and, like,
my God,
losing
the
my
best.
mind. And be like, what? We're
Who's
allowed
read Gone Girl?
or at least seen the movie.
You
I won't
guys,
spoil it.
Carl and Gina.
I won't spoil it, but I remember being like, oh, I didn't know we were allowed to do that. Like, like oh, okay.
Oh my gosh, that's
And
funny.
and yeah, like and just I really like Jane Harper for mysteries. Like she's an Australian writer. They're so immersive. Like I like feeling like I'm in Tasmania and I can feel the water off the rocks and I can smell the salt and someone's dead and we have to figure out why. Like I find that very fun.
Shout out to Carl. I feel like whenever I read his writings, I'm literally there. Like he did this story before the Germany story. What was the story, Carl?
It was like set in a different country.
It was in a different country, but like I felt like I was there.
Somalia.
Somalia! Shout out to Somalia.
My favorite thing about being at a Heidi event is that she is constantly trying to get other people to talk about their book. You are like, who can I shout out? Who can I talk about? So I feel like that's such a supportive way to approach a writing event. Is now you have the mic. Let me share it with as many people as possible. I think that's very cool. And so with writing with other people, working with other people, how do you support writers in your community and online? Like, how do you make those communities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like it's really easy nowadays if you have social media and you just start clicking follow, and then people hopefully follow you back. And like for my U.S. publisher, we have like an Instagram chat for all the debut authors, and we all talk shit about the publishing people.
Which is really fun. I wonder if they do that about the authors. Like, are they all crazy? Neurotic?
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Why would you put that in my brain? Me and like my people-pleasing ways, I'm just like, well, now I need them to love me for this, whatever slack they have going.
Right.
Like, oh gosh. No, I love to believe that they understand that we're all beautiful, delicate flowers that must be supported at all costs. We must be protected. Yeah.
And it's really funny because I love about your writing how you discuss like the Minnesotan way of like just totally apologizing to inanimate objects. Like that is so me. I think I got it from my mom. Like anytime like someone bumps into me, I'm like, oh sorry. And like I don't think they do that in like New York.
No, I don't think that they're as concerned about what the table feels.
Right.
That is a uniquely Midwestern tradition. mission.
Right.
No, we didn't even touch on this yet, but the regionalism of your book too. It is takes place in Minneapolis. There are shout outs of places. You talk about Minnesota nice and how it's like more like Minnesota passive aggressive. Like it is a little bit nice. It's a little bit, not non-confrontational. And I just, as someone who lives in Minnesota, I just absolutely loved that. Your book was originally bought by a British publisher. So did you get any pushback on setting it in Minneapolis, or they wanted it in New York City?
So it's really interesting because the founder of Embla, the UK publisher, said to me that she really loved this story because when she was like 17, came to Minnesota and spent a summer here, which is like totally random. So I got lucky. Yeah.
There's nothing like a Minnesota summer.
Aww.
The lake life.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's the best.
Would you ever, because your book was set, what season was your set? It felt very autumnal to me.
I feel like it was almost like 9 months of a year, right?
Mhm.
When did it start? I don't know. Well, maybe it was spring, when it started spring.
Would you ever want to write like a Minnesota summer book, like really lake adjacent, lake focused?
I would. I think that would be awesome. What would be a cute, like a cute meet cute? What do they call it?
Yeah, me too.
A meet cute.
Yeah.
Like someone's drowning in a lake.
Oh yes, a life-saving situation.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. I think
But
that
then
would
if you were writing it, somehow we would have to incorporate a graveyard.
we'd have to incorporate a group.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that for every book. That's just my impulse. I don't do that every time. I do have to. It's like I have to get it out there. I have to get it out of my system.
Yeah.
I write a draft where like we're all dealing with grief or something, or we're all at a graveyard, and then suddenly I'm like, and now it's done. now I can write a book about something else.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that is something that a lot of Minnesota people will really enjoy, is that there is so much regionalism. You talk so much about things that would be really familiar to everyone here in this room. But it seems like it's also resonating with people all over the world. You're translated into, is it Portuguese? So you have people in Brazil are reading your book and loving it. What has that experience been of having international readers?
It's super weird because I can't even understand my biography. I mean, they could be totally writing something so random and I'd have no idea. But there were different release dates for all of them, the US, the UK, and then September 6th, I think was the Brazil one. And then, so it's been fun being tagged on Instagram for reels and people are seeing that. And it was really cute when I didn't think that I was gonna get any free copies. Because like for the other ones, they came before the release date. So then this one though came after the release date. So I was super happy, and my mom was super happy because she kept trying to buy it in Portuguese. And then the government was like, no, you have to live here and you have to pay taxes. And so when I got the box, Esty opened it, sorry, but yeah, that's okay. And then I had to reopen it in my reel. But it was so cute. They gave me like a ring, like a diamond ring, and then bookmarks, and it was so cute. Yeah. I guess I like the country of Brazil. I guess I've never been there.
Well, they like you.
Yeah.
So it all works out.
Yeah.
Would you ever want to go to Brazil to like see your book in a bookstore?
That's a great question. I always wonder about insects. Before I travel to a place, I have to first look up what kind of insects are there. Are you like that? Because we're twins?
I mean, I don't like a big bug. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not interested in a giant spider. I'm not interested
Do you
in.
have a phobia?
I wouldn't say it rises to the level of phobia. Do I want to be involved? Here's my thought process. Let's get into my point of view on bugs.
Right.
This is my space. Your space is the world.
Right.
I let you live in the world. You do whatever you want.
Yes.
Don't come into my bathroom.
Right.
I'm not interested in you being in my bathroom.
Right.
I want you out in your space.
Yes.
And so that's my feeling on it. I think that's rational. Like I think it's strange to let them live.
So then, are you the type, like one of my best friends loves bugs and spiders, so she will take them and like put them gently outside and be like, oh, you're so cute, and then send me a video and just make me freak out. Do you do that, or are you just like and you kill them?
I've never found a bug cute. I mean, I don't have that relationship with them, and I'm happy for them. I want them to. I think that they're useful to the world. They have their place, but I am. I don't see them like I would like a puppy. I just don't view them in the same light.
That's fair.
Yeah. I do not know how we got here to the bugs, but I'm glad that we are. I feel like I feel like we learned a lot about ourselves, so that was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are there any other, is there anything else about your story that you want us to know before we wrap up?
No.
Well, I think if we've gotten to the point where we are now talking about our bug preferences, I think this has been a really wonderful talk. I'm so glad that I got to speak with you tonight about your book. And if you haven't read it, you have to. It's absolutely fabulous. It's very funny. And I think at this point we're going to take questions, right?
Yeah, we can take a few questions.
Great.
Hi,
Hi.
do you work mostly on a typewriter or a computer?
I love that question. I did.
I had bad experiences
About what? Typewriters?
at one point, I'm old enough, so all my writing was on the typewriter,
Yeah.
and making changes is brutal.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine.
And when
Yeah.
computers came along, I felt liberated. Now,
Yeah.
how do you work?
Right. Well, I remember growing up, we did have an old typewriter, and I would use it for fun, and then to erase something, I think we used like an eraser.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so that's like really inconvenient.
but what do you work on now?
So I mean, I just work on a laptop right now, and I do tons of backspacing. What? Do I dig?
Also dictate.
No, but I've heard like there's authors who like they'll go hiking, and then like there's one guy who hikes, and as he's hiking, he's also dictating his story.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't like people like that. It's too easy for them. Like when I'm hiking, I just have to focus on breathing. Like how do you do Yeah.
Yeah, I don't dictate either. I think that it's like you have to have a very special kind of brain where you like the backspacing is part of it. It's part of the process. I labor over a word and then I decide like no, I'm moving on. I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
What do you struggle with the most? Like, do you struggle to think of a premise, or to get stakes, or like the general plot?
Oh, that's a lovely question, and this is going to be a really weird answer. Sometimes I just struggle with like moving a person from room to room.
Yes.
Do you also? It's like the stupid things.
If I don't say
Yeah.
every step that they take, how will they know how they got from the couch to the kitchen?
Yes. It's like always the stupid small things, and I'll like be laboring over a sentence, and I'll be like, how do I? And I think a few times I think I called Julie, and I'm like, and then she's like, well, why don't you just have them go down the stairs? Like, oh, you're a genius.
Yeah, I think it's those like transitional moments. Like it's like it's ramping up into a scene sometimes, and sometimes the solution is that I'm starting the scene way too early, and that's why I'm like, why can't I figure out how, okay, so they're gonna walk across the room, and then they're gonna get here, and then she's gonna say this, and then she's gonna offer him coffee, and then it's like, I need to just get right into they need to talk about this, and so sometimes it's that, sometimes it's the figuring out what a plot is. I am very good at a premise. I have a much harder time at figuring out what they're going to do for the rest of the book. I'm like, what if they're in this weird situation? And then it's like, and then what?
Right, it's like the actual plot.
Mm-hmm.
I think that comes to me too, like with Frady. I just had this vision of her first meeting the rabbi, and they're on the Mississippi Bridge, and it's like 2 a.m. And then I'm like, well, now what?
Any other questions?
I guess we're done.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you for interviewing me, and thank you so much, Johanna. Did I say that right?
Yeah.